What's up, guys? Today on the Steve Bizzogany Show, we are going to be talking about how to learn from your mistakes and the best way to go about doing that. And actually, there is a little bit of beauty in your mistakes that you make on a daily basis, or even the most egregious mistakes you think you can possibly make, that there is some beauty in that as well. I am a firm believer that there is a reason for everything. I think that there's a reason for whatever happens to you in life. There is a reason, there is a lesson, there's a silver lining somewhere in that. You just have to look for it. My past, I'm human too, just like everybody else. The mistakes that I have a past that is littered with mistakes. So what's cool about that is, looking back on my life, you can kind of look at and see where the mistakes have brought me to where I am today. And you see, but you don't realize it in the moment, because in the moment you feel like crap because you made a mistake, whether it's an egregious one or, if you just forgot to pick up milk at the supermarket or whatever. Depending on what it is, you do get to learn from them and you can develop from them. So what I'm going to talk about today is some of the effects that mistakes do cause, what they can cause, and I guess how to avoid them, how to avoid the emotional consequence of the mistakes, because the actual mistake itself is not as damaging as the way we as human beings take the mistakes. And then after that, I'm going to talk about 4 solutions that I come up with, at least in my life, to overcome mistakes and things that I do to, make myself feel better after I make these mistakes. So first, what I did, like I said before, is that you can, mistakes can actually take you to some pretty dark places. Depending on how big of a mistake, it takes you to some pretty dark places. And I want to let you know that first, in those dark places, I want you to understand that this is, first of all, very normal. Everybody makes big mistakes at some point in their life, so that don't feel like, you're the only person going through this. This isn't true. Everybody goes through this at some point in their life, maybe multiple times in their life. But just understand that. So one of the things that I do to look at this is just understand that, I'm sure you've heard this before, diamonds actually have to undergo some extreme, severe pressure to become diamonds. And then that's when they become valuable. That's when the greatest transformation for that particular stone is made, under intense, crazy amount of pressure. For same thing as with, there was another quote that I read. It talked about olives and grapes. These things need to be absolutely crushed before they are turned into olives, turned into olive oil, or grapes turned into wine. I mean, these things are crushed out of their brains before they become the end product of wine or olive oil. And even seeds, like for trees. So seeds start to grow. Their transformation begins underground in the dirt and buried. I mean, that's kind of how you might feel sometimes. But just understand, that's where the greatest transformation comes. And for me, one of my biggest mistakes that I ever made in my life, I remember feeling like total crap. And then what I realized is the months after that mistake, I came out a totally different person. And there was a huge transformation there. And I've been told by a couple people who have met me before, who knew me before and after my mistakes, is that they said, Steve, you're not even recognizable, because it's such a big transformation. I guess the transformation, is proportional to the size of the mistake. I mean, forgetting the milk at the supermarket may not be as transformational of a mistake as maybe there could be a slew of different things, I don't know, being unfaithful to a spouse, or stealing from your company, stealing money from your company, all these other crazy, what's the guy's name? Jordan Belfort, who stole from millions of people, all these different huge crimes. So obviously, whatever dark period those people are going in, the size of those mistakes are much larger than just forgetting the milk. So, you'll grow more from those mistakes. Hopefully, that's the goal. Another thing is, when mistakes depress you, here's one thing I want to make you aware of. Not just to know that it's okay to be depressed. And then there's the state of depression. And I'm not talking about the clinically diagnosed depression. I'm not, because obviously I'm not a psychologist. I don't know about that. But there is, being depressed and being down is an emotion. It's a mood. You can be depressed. You can be sad. You can be upset. That's normal. But to be in a consistent state of that and be in a state of depression all the time is really, that's where the negative momentum begins to build, and then you're on a crash course for just more and more negativity in your life, and that's not what you want. So it's one thing to be, okay, I'm depressed, but once you fall into a state of depression, I'm not, like I said, I'm not talking about the clinically diagnosed, take antidepressants type of thing. I mean just the emotion of depression. Once you fall into that state of depression, that you've got to do some more significant things to get yourself and break that momentum. You have to understand there's difference between depressed and depression, and you want to avoid depression. The other thing is, like I said, the negative momentum is something that we just want to avoid. So what I want to talk about now is the solutions to what some of the things that I do to keep myself on a positive track, on a positive momentum, and to keep myself moving forward and to avoid the negative momentum from developing. Which the first thing I do is I like to focus on my plate. Put the blinders on. We don't look at anybody else, what they're doing. Unfollow people on social media if you have to. Because what that does is it helps you avoid comparison. And when you're avoiding comparison, then you have your own plate to focus on, and then it just becomes you versus you. And when you beat who you were yesterday or the day before that, then you're just getting better, and then you just get better and better and better, and then you're not worrying about like, okay, so-and-so has 20 more listings than me, but I only have 3 listings. Like, you're not making that comparison, because then that takes from your accomplishment of, hey, you got 3 listings. Like, how cool is that? So it builds your confidence that way. So just focus on who you are now. Focus on your plate. Put the blinders on. On that note, when I was talking about the 3 listings versus the other person's 20 listings, that person may have 20 listings, have a ton of success, and not be fulfilled. As Tony Robbins puts it, success without fulfillment is the greatest failure of all. And so, but you might be here with, hey, look, I got 3 listings. I'm so grateful that I have 3 people that trust me enough to want to list their home with me, and that they think that I can represent them better than everybody else in my market. Like, that is something to be grateful for. That's something awesome. And it helps you stay positive, because it's like, wow, somebody sees that I'm worth it. Somebody trusts me. Somebody believes in me as a real estate agent. I can do this. So don't ever shortchange anything that you do, whether it's 1 listing, 2 listings, 3 listings. If it's 20 listings, it doesn't matter. Don't shortchange it. So it just be very thankful for what you have. And then because your eyes are on your own plate, you can be thankful for what else you have in life: a happy life, a happy wife, a roof over your head, clothes to put on your back. I mean, all these good things. If you look away from your plate, you stop looking at the blessings that are on your plate. So that helps as well. As far as the mistakes themselves go, look, if this isn't the most obvious thing in the world, I feel like this is obvious, but I want to put it in here anyway, is that you do have to learn from them, because then we get into the definition of insanity, where we start doing the same thing over and over and over again, and expecting a different result, but it's not anything different. And if we're not learning, then we're not growing, and if we're not growing, then we're dying. And that's, to be honest with you, that's my opinion. So we do have to learn from our mistakes, and look for that silver lining when you do make a mistake. And then the good thing that I like to ask myself is, how can I be better? So, and this last thing I've actually talked about in another episode on the podcast, but ask yourself your critical questions. Now, everybody has different critical questions. My 4 critical questions are, would God approve of this? Would my wife approve of this? Can I put my name to this? And, I don't have kids yet, but if I did have kids, it would be, would this set a good example for my kids? Those are my 4 critical questions. And if I have to get a yes to every one of those questions before I take action. So, so maybe if it's a business decision, I'd start with the top and say, okay, would God approve of this? Maybe. So far it's ethical. Would my wife approve of this? And I have a conversation with her, and she says, Steve, I got a bad gut feeling about this. This is a bad idea. So that's a no. I'd probably just stop right there, because she doesn't approve. If, usually, for all the married men out there who understand, when your spouse has a bad gut feeling, that's usually a very good indicator that what you're doing is not a good move. So ask yourself those 4 those are my 4 critical questions. You may have different ones. You can come up with your own. You could have 7 critical questions. It doesn't matter. I just like to have those 4 for myself. So those are my little tidbits today on learning from your mistakes. And establishing a positive momentum in your life. Hope you guys find a lot of value in that, and I will see you guys on the next episode.